You're welcome back. This is The Pulse, and we are paying close attention to incidents unfolding at Adisadel College. This afternoon, some investigations are underway, both in Accra and in Cape Coast, into the matter of some violence captured on video and going viral between two students of Adisadel College. It occurred in Kwaku House on campus. Let's start with Semefa Rejoice Kwesu, who is in Cape Coast right now. Semefa, you have been in Adisadel School today, Adisadel College today. Tell us what you've picked up. Okay, we will be reconnecting with Semefa. But in the meantime, we can also bring you a conversation with Edmund Foley. Now, he's a lawyer. He's an expert in criminal law. Let's see if there are criminal aspects to this conversation. Mr. Foley, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Kojo. Great pleasure to connect with you again, and rather unfortunate to discuss issues of bullying going way back to our school days, and which sadly have continued till now.
Indeed. Now, you and I were in the same secondary school round about the same time. And this was not strange, to see this kind of violence being meted out against students, especially by older or bigger students. Now, let's talk through the criminal aspect of this. What we saw was, it looked like an assault on this young man. But we will bow to your superior knowledge on this one. Talk us through the legal implications of what we see in this video.
Right. No, thank you. On the substance of it, and you can see if investigations go, and with what we are seeing in those videos, there is some evidence of causing harm. Section 69, I believe, of our Criminal Offences Act would deal with causing harm, which essentially is to inflict some bodily pain, injury of sorts on another person with intent that that person suffers that harm being caused. Now, causing harm is quite a serious offense on our statute books. You could also look at it from the context of an assault and battery, for that matter, criminal assault and battery within Ghana's Criminal Offences Act. Since they are students, on the procedural side of things, assuming that they are under 18 or below 21, then that would require that they are taken through the juvenile justice process, which doesn't necessarily put children or young persons who have committed offenses, the law refers to them as juveniles. The contemporary description of such persons would be, of course, children in conflict with the law. They would then go through the juvenile justice system of Ghana, where the trial or the whole judicial process would involve the participation of a social worker as well, given that you are dealing with persons in a formative stage of life.
Now, there's a lot of conversation on social media about, who's to blame? And you hear people blaming the parents of the perpetrators. You hear people blaming the teachers for having lax supervision of the students and so forth. But let's talk about legal liability here. I mean, there's a duty of care, no doubt, but walk us through it. Right. Assuming that this were to become a legal matter, where would the blame, on whose doorstep would the blame be placed?
Right. From the criminal side first, then definitely you are looking at the young boy who is seen attacking the other students. So it's a question of personal legal liability when it comes to the criminal side. The one who was seen attacking his colleague would be the one held responsible directly for that act. Then you could also look at it from a civil law angle or the civil procedure. Now, just for quick public education, when you talk of a crime is a wrong against the whole of society. So all of us as Ghanaians have agreed to a certain set of rules to guide our conduct. But civil matters are usually wrong between two individuals. or matters that govern two individuals. Okay, so the boy involved, the victim, let's call him that, could also bring civil action against the other child. But being children, of course, then they would have to sue through what we call a next friend, possibly their parents, who would bring such an action. The parents, so this would be a civil action for even assault as well,
Right.
assault and battery,
Right.
where they could get some damages for what has happened. But then at the level of the school, the parents also considering a contractual relationship of sorts, a fiduciary relationship between the school, that I brought my child to a school and I expect the child to be protected, could also bring an action against the school. But that would really look at the failure of the school to protect the child, that responsibility in that contractual relationship. So that could be another point to look at when it comes to possible legal interventions.
Right. I want to bring in Amanda Akwoko Clinton. Amanda is the head of chambers at the Law Office of Clinton Consultancy. She's a human rights lawyer as well. And a little bird tells me she also once upon a time was a student in a well-known secondary school in Cape Coast. Amanda, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Right, now, troubling events coming out of Adisado College. But let's be fair, these are not new, are they?
No, they're not. But I think, as the Ghana Education Service has recently said, Adisado is handling this extremely well. From the most recent article I read on it, I think they've expelled 2 of the boys involved. The third one that was filmed, they've expelled, and the third one that was filmed has been suspended. And those who were viewing the incident but not, getting involved in terms of stopping it, will face disciplinary action. And I think the housemaster and the deputy have been relieved temporarily of their position. So I think the response is very good. But if it hadn't gone viral, perhaps the response might not have been the same. And I think the indictment on the students who committed this, it again goes to show it's a lot about culture in terms of this sort of group enterprise. And they become one in terms of, just the momentum and the adrenaline that's running for this sort of group enterprise as they're committing this criminal act. But the indictment on them, I think, is quite considerable, because apart from what my learned colleague just said, about the criminal offense and where this could potentially go, the social indictment that the whole thing has backfired on them in terms of they're being judged at every level. And they might be stigmatized, particularly because they were in a very good school in Cape Coast. I went to Cape Coast school as well. So, it's pretty hard to get into these schools. And how are you going to go to the next school at the first tier level, if at all? And how are you going to explain away this incident where your face is everywhere and, your parents have to explain that? So apart from the criminal element, I do think the societal element of dealing with this is important. And the fact that because of social media, they've been exposed in terms of, you can't exactly say, I wasn't there, I wasn't doing this. So I think it's very good that, social media can be constructed in such a way as to publicly shame them in a way, because, they'll have to explain for those acts. And I think we can't get away from the issue of bullying. Also involves a group mentality, group enterprise. They were in it together. They were running on adrenaline. And hopefully this can be a signal for Ghana Education Service, as well as, schools throughout the country, to introduce some sort of policy, as well as, to just stop the mentality and address that, I think.
Right. Now, I spoke to the Ghana Education Service head of public relations this morning on radio, on the Super Morning Show. She explained to us that, in fact, to date, the Ghana Education Service has not had a unified code of conduct, which would cover how teachers and students are to handle bullying. That is yet to be done. It's something that is going through their processes and will be approved by their council at some point soon. But it doesn't exist. So every school has their own code of conduct. Now, you've praised Adesado College for their management of the situation. But how would you assess the college in their efforts to have avoided such incidents, bearing in mind how popular and common we know some of these these occurrences are in secondary schools across the country?
Well, I mean, I hope this is an isolated incident to start off with, and I think occurrences like this also show that it's like a virus. You know, when one bad seed, one bad egg, you know, sort of puts a bad light on a very good institution, and you cannot perhaps. You can guard against that in terms of setting up a protocol that you follow from Ghana Education Service as well as internal school protocol. But I think it would be highly unfair to say that this was an Adesado problem. It is it's these sort of things. It's like a bad virus. You know, you've just got to expunge it. You've just got to deal with it on a mentality level. And you've just got to make sure that although you are inviting students who have extremely high grades, that they are fully aware of where this could lead in terms of the reprimand, and that it could affect the rest of the student's life. But I think this is an isolated incident, and I think, you know, each Ghana Educational Service working on a policy document would show their commitment to ensure a safe and secure learning environment for all students. And this is very necessary to have a policy document to be rolled out to all schools so that they just have a basic guideline.
Amanda, before I bring Edmund back in, because you're a human rights lawyer, I want to ask you this. There are parents who are watching us right now who might have been considering sending their children to Adesado College or any other of the well-known boarding schools across the country. They are watching this now and they're wondering, so if I take my child to a school, should there not be more protections in place to ensure that my child is not victimized by those who are bigger and stronger than him or her? Is there nothing that ought to be immediately done to protect the human rights of young children that we're sending into, you know, these boarding school situations?
I think you can't guard against risk that might just come about, except for having a strong policy document that's perhaps rolled out nationally, and having schools that ensure that the students know that there's a zero tolerance policy for any form of bullying. Because although this was a physical assault, I think sometimes the worst kind of assault is someone being bullied psychologically, etc. So this is a key moment for Ghana Education Service to roll out a very good policy document on how to safeguard, you know, children throughout the country. But also, it's a good teaching moment, I think, for all schools, be it in Cape Coast or otherwise, to just show, you know, without restraint, that they have a zero tolerance policy. And as someone who spent, you know, I spent 2 years at Wege here at Wesley Girls, you know, before I went to Lincoln. And so I benefited very much from a Cape Coast school, and it really taught a lot in terms of just enduring, so to speak. So having been in Cape Coast, you know, I was put there because it was the best. And I learned a lot, you know, so some of these things teach you a lot of things in life, and how to report if you are being bullied, and how to be in a safe environment where you're in schools with a zero tolerance policy for bullying, etc. And if you do commit to a bullying act, then you would face the wrath of that policy, I think.
I'd love for you both to stay with us, Edmund and Amanda, but very quickly, let's touch base with Semefa, who is in Cape Coast. She's been to Adesado College, spent a lot of time there this morning, and has the latest. Now, Semefa, why don't you walk us through what you learned when you spent time at Adesado College earlier today?
Right, Kojo. So when I arrived in the morning, I was there till midday. the school, everything was calm. Academic work was ongoing, but the headmaster wouldn't speak on the issue because, according to him, the National Office of the GES has taken over the issue and further investigations are underway. So he wouldn't want to blow things up. But I spoke with the regional PRO of GES earlier, and contrary to other reports that the culprit has been dismissed, she said the committee that was put in place to establish the root cause of the issue and also come up with the findings came with a recommendation. She didn't speak on the findings because they've instructed the headmaster of the school to write a situational report to the office. They are yet to receive that, so she's not privy to that information. But she gave me the recommendation that came from the committee that they've suspended the culprit and then the victim, as well as the person who took the video, who are all final year students. So the culprit will be at home and will take the WASI examination at the WAEC office, WAEC 4 in Accra. And then the victim also be in the house, but take the examination under parental escort. So these were the development as at the time that I was there. But the instruction from the director of GES was that the headmaster, the parents of the students, and the students themselves should come to Accra, the office of the GES, and meet with the Board of Governors for further investigation. So the outcome of that particular meeting will determine whether the students should be dismissed or not. But as at now, we can't establish that they were dismissed or they are on suspension.
Right. Well, thanks for that update, Semifa Rejoice Kwesu, who's our reporter. She's been covering this matter in the Central Region since it broke yesterday. Now, I want to wrap with you, Edmund, wrap up with you very quickly on this. I mean, you've pointed to where all the, criminal and legal responsibilities would lie. But I wonder about those who were observing this harm being caused, this assault, occurring. I wonder about them. Are they criminally liable?
There is definitely a responsibility under our Criminal Offences Act that when one sees a crime, being committed, and I would think that a crime now involving such bodily harm, they would have taken steps to intervene. But then it comes again to the whole point about education. And I have been advocating over and over again. Yes, not everyone needs to go to law school, but as Ghanaians, we just need a certain modicum of legal knowledge and understanding when issues arise and we need to intervene or take action as ordinary citizens. A part of me at some point in my life also, I've worked on child law issues. And for GES, I am with Amanda 100% about they working out a good policy document on this and the interventions, even for, yes, those children who stood by and were watching what was happening. But more importantly, to emphasize that since we took away corporal punishment, as a country, we really need a very good discussion and understanding of how we discipline. I mean, the whole positive discipline concept. This morning, I heard on many of the stations people who were on this concern that discipline program that let us go back to the discipline for that matter. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you, Edmund Foley, for spending some time with us on this all-important matter. We're thoroughly educated. Amanda Clinton, of course, has also shared very interesting perspectives, and we appreciate you for that. All right. Now,
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
All right. Now, let's speak to Divine Kwe. Now, he's an education specialist with Africa Education Watch. He joins us right now. Divine, thanks for making the time. Now, I'm interested in what we've heard so far from the Ghana Education Service. no unified code of conduct. Every school has its own code of conduct. But in terms of what to do about bullying, the only instruction the Ghana Education Service had for us was that if a child is bullied, they should report it. Now, in your experience, how effective is it for a child who is being bullied to report it to the authorities? Does that make them safer or make them even more of a target? Divine, I hope you're with us.
Hello, Kojo.
Yes,
Sorry,
hi.
I cannot hear you.
Yes, I see you were busy typing away there. Let me ask that question again. Thank you so much for making the time.
Yes.
I was asking about what we learned from the Ghana Education Service today. First of all, they informed us there is not yet a unified code of conduct for schools, which would have dealt with how bullying is to be handled. There's no such thing. They are still working on it. But what they did point us to was that the standing instruction is that if you are being bullied, report it. Now, I'm wondering how effective that is in your experience. When a student is being bullied and they report it, does that make them safer or does that make them more of a target?
All right, thank you, Kojo, and good afternoon to your viewers, and also good afternoon to the co-panelists. The reality is that we have still not gotten to the point of addressing issues of violence in our schools in general, not just bullying, but when we talk of physical violence, psychological violence, and sexual violence, we have still not gotten a solution. And we are doing little, not just at the secondary school level, even at the basic education level. It's a whole issue. And so in 2018, one of the interventions that the Ministry of Education through the Ghana Education Service wanted to do was to introduce what they call the Safe School program to address these issues of violence and bullying in our school. So yes, indeed, we don't have a policy in place to address it, but there's a program that was launched in 2018 to help us address it, having realized that over the years, the effect of bullying and other forms of violence on the students' academic performance and then their entire enrollment and continuation in school. However, the challenge remains the effective implementation of that particular Safe School program. In fact, since 2018, a good number of teachers do not even know of the existence of a program like that. Students that the program also target do not know about it existing. If the students were to know about a program like that, you have known that one leg of the program is to empower them to report when they are being bullied. And not just that, the bystanders also have known that they have a role to play in addressing bullying by trying to intervene or report. But you'd have realized that the child did not report, and then the bystanders also, they were virtually doing nothing. They were videoing and some were running commentary. But look at the program, it is to empower the bystanders also to step in. It is also to empower the victim to report.
How are we empowering them? In what ways are we empowering the victims to report? How are we doing that?
Okay, the program is supposed to run educational programs as part of the activities lineup. Teachers, first of course, were to have their capacity developed through in-service programs to be able to identify victims, possible students that could be victim to issues of abuse, and then also how to handle, supposed to establish clear communication line on reporting, and then also supposed to have the student program targeting students like talk shows to be able to, for them to understand their role or what they need to do when they are being victimized. So those are some of the ways of the empowerment. And not just that, you have seen that even you come in?
Sorry, I was going to ask, I mean, but why are we asking victims of bullying to report it? Does that work? When a victim reports to their teacher or their, housemaster that they've been bullied, does that not make them even more of a target for bullies?
Not at all. when we want to approach it like that, then it means that we are asking them to keep quiet, and the more they keep quiet, that's how it will fester and become a whole lot of issues in the school.
But
I'm sure if
is there
are
not a
interesting
better
cases
way of having them
reported-
report, maybe with anonymity? Is there not a way of making the reporting process safer for them so that they don't suffer repercussions?
Of course, that is part of the program. Look at the program. It is not that you go and then your identity is obviously. And the same thing applies to the bystanders. If you are to report, your identity is also supposed to be protected. And it's supposed to be one of the works that the guardians and counseling coordinators in the school are supposed to be doing. But of course, we all know that they are a burden because beside their work as counselors in the school, they have to teach one or two subjects.
Why
do
they have to
but
teach?
I'm glad that.
Why do they have to teach? They are guidance and counseling officers. Why are they teaching?
Yes, but unfortunately, they have been assigned a subject to teach in the schools. But
my question is why? Why? Who has assigned them
as a challenge?
My question is why, Divine? Who has assigned them teaching jobs? Why? Why have we done this?
Of course, their employer has assigned them the teaching job. So you go to our senior high school, we have guardians and counseling coordinators, but they are not there just as that is not their primary function. They have other subjects that we have to teach as well. But I was coming in quickly that the ministry has identified that as a challenge, asking guardians and counselors to teach. So right now, the ministry is working to develop a policy on guardians and counseling provision from the basic school all through to the senior high school. Just last week, I understand that tertiary will also be included in the policy. And in that policy, their work will be decoupled, whereby they will not be assigned teaching job. They will focus on the provision of the guardians and counseling services in our school.
But Divine, originally, their mandate is not to teach. Why do we need a policy to ensure that a person who has been employed as a guidance and counseling officer, why do we need a policy to ensure that they are not given a different job? Why don't they just do the job they were hired to do? Should there not rather be a policy to ensure that the GES... should there not rather be a policy to ensure that the GES sanctions any head who gives, unnecessary duties to a guidance and counseling officer?
Well, I agree with you that our counselors need not to engage in subject teaching in the school, but that has been the practice over the years. Very unfortunate. That is a gap that has been identified. And what I'm glad about is that steps are being taken to rectify the anomaly. It has run over the years, and that's not the best practice. Their work involves a lot. So for me, I believe they should have just focused on their duty as counselors in the school, but they have been burdened with other duty. But again, as I mentioned, I'm just glad that we have identified that as a gap and steps are being taken to rectify that. But I also agree with you that we don't even need to wait till the policy is mature before we begin to decouple their work from teaching, so that they can focus on this, and then they'll be able to take care of issues of violence in school, like I mentioned, not just physical violence, but also issues of sexual and psychological violence. Because of course they are so much high in our schools. Data shows that 1 out of every 3 students in every 2 months experience any form of violence, either from a student to a student or from a teacher to student. It's really an issue that we need to address. And I strongly believe the counselor has roles to play, and therefore we need not to burden them in their schools.
Now, Amanda, let's revisit the human rights issues here. These are kids, but the video showing this violent act has now gone viral. Are there some human rights concerns from that development?
Well, I mean, I think the human rights concern is quite evident in terms of, his right as a human being was violated because he was touched without his permission. He was assaulted, and He was further assaulted when that video went viral, and he didn't want to be seen as that. And this sort of group mentality, it's like a gang mentality, those watching, those videoing, those participating in the crime was just, I think it really was a damning effect, particularly because it went viral. But it's also about changing the culture, because as Ghana Education Service rolls out this policy document, because, I've worked in the policy department before, it's not just about rolling out the policy documents, it's about implementing it. So how are you going to implement it? Are you going to target schools? For instance, the GES can target schools where occurrences like this have happened. So they send extra posters. So as soon as you go to the school, on a main board, there is a massive sign. There is a stand, like a poster stand at a key place. It ingrains in the student's mind with pictures. These are the things that can happen if you spend your time trying to bully someone. We have a zero tolerance policy. You can be expelled. Your rest of your life will be affected. I mean, something quite dramatic. So the GES, in rolling out that policy document, would also have to back it up, I think, with what is the paraphernalia in terms of the posters and the stands you're going to send out, particularly to key schools who have been known as schools with a lot of bullying, particularly, boarding schools, and to just deal with culture. Because once you change the culture of an institution and the culture of what people are to expect, should they commit the crime?
Amanda, forgive me for cutting in. Forgive me, Amanda. There is some news just coming in, so please just hold on to that thought, because we will continue to hear what you were saying. But there is some news just coming in from the presidency. President Akufo-Addo has made a new ministerial appointment to the position of Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources. Let me read the statement, which is signed by Eugene Ahin and dated today, 25th of July. The President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has appointed the Minister of State at the Presidency and Member of Parliament for Tano North, Frida Prempeh, as the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources. She takes over from Cecilia Abna Dapa, whose letter of resignation, dated Saturday, 22nd July 2023, was accepted by the President on Saturday, 22nd July 2023. President Akufo-Addo, in consultation with the Ministers for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration and Roads and Highways, respectively, has also appointed the Deputy Minister for Roads and Highways and Member of Parliament for Efija Sechere East, Mavis Nkansapwedu, as Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, and Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration and Member of Parliament for Tatale Sanguli, Thomas Mbomba, has been appointed as Deputy Minister for Roads and Highways. These appointments take effect immediately, and of course, we will bring you more details as they unfold. All right, let's get back to our story. We were in conversation with Amanda Clinton, Divine Kwe, and Edmond Foley, who has managed to get a bit more time to spend with us, so we'll be hearing more from him. Now, Amanda, you were making a point. Forgive me for the interruption, but these things happen. You were making a point.
Yes, that, in the Ghana Education Service rolled out a policy document to address bullying and the culture of bullying and how to stop that. I think the key point for them to focus on perhaps is a zero tolerance for bullying and how that is going to look like. And I also think that it's not just about a policy document that's written, but you've got to have pictures, sort of like, as I said, if they roll out the policy document, it has to be backed up with posters and stands, etc. And if GES can't afford to obviously roll that out to every secondary school, particularly boarding schools in the country, then you send them PDF versions, and the schools that are particularly encouraged to make sure that students know this can put up those stands and can put up those posters. But changing culture is about changing perspective. It's about introducing positive behavior within the school setting. and just restoring discipline in a way that is actually going to affect changing the culture, and in a way that's going to benefit the student, because as you've said, parents send their kids to school, particularly boarding schools, to be in a safe environment, free from assault. And so whatever the GES can do to support this, beyond a policy document in terms of, posters and etc., it would be helpful. And perhaps, schools being encouraged that since they have a morning devotion and, morning meetings, most mornings, that at least once every 2 months, their talking points can be about, the zero tolerance for violence and for psychological abuse, as well as sexual violence within their institution.
Now, James, thanks so much for making a little bit more time for us. Now, you will not believe the number of text messages I got from parents, particularly fathers, who wanted to know if a son or daughter of theirs were to have suffered the kind of attack that we saw depicted in this video, if they were to retaliate by going to that school and dishing out some violence of their own at the perpetrators, would they face criminal consequences?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the answer to the problem at hand is not to mete out more violence, but to also, complement what Amanda said about policy and intervention and all of that. It's also to recognize that as we do it, we have to admit our numbers have ballooned. We need to somehow manage our schools, bearing in mind that the kind of facilities we have, the numbers we are dealing with. I'm a former board chair of one of our senior high schools in Ghana, and I can identify what my brother from EduWatch is saying about guidance and counseling teachers having to go to the classroom. It's a whole cocktail of difficulties we have with our SHS system. And even at the junior level, we have not even touched the sexual violence issues that both Amanda and my brother have talked about. Yes. So the answer is not more violence, but also to appreciate that as we have to do it, we must be mindful of the kind of stress that the teachers are dealing with. And for me also, the stress that the children are dealing with. As we are talking about this, on our own school groups where we went, somebody is talking about a senior back in the day who cut his thighs with a blade. And we never knew this. He's just sharing this, that I've lived all these years with a trauma. And interestingly, he just said, perhaps this guy was under stress. So even the children themselves, the kind of school system we have now, this track system, we've loaded them with so much academic content. Perhaps we might have to look at how these children are coping psychologically with the load on them and how they are taking it out on each other with such violence. It's something really for us to look at. So definitely more violence is not the answer from a parent. I can understand. My own child has suffered bullying before, and I just placed myself in the shoes of that father. I was irate, but I had to also work with the rules that the school had provided.
Yeah. And I think you raise a very important point about mental health here. And this this strain that we're putting on the guidance and counseling officers is just unconscionable. It's something that we absolutely have to attack. Now, why don't we find out the latest? My colleague James Abeji is actually at the Ghana Education Service. He's been monitoring the development of this story. James, tell us what has emerged in the past few hours.
As we speak, the children, the students, as well as their parents or guardians have arrived here at the Ghana Education Service, as Semefa has indicated earlier. And so before we came here, one of the students have arrived earlier, the one we saw in the video, allegedly perpetrating the act, was here with a family member. They were already here, and then we were told that the rest of the team are on their way to the Ghana Education Service premises. In about 10 minutes, they also arrived. The school bus of Adisco actually arrived with some other 2 vehicles. Now, when I made a head count, 5 more students came with the school bus. In addition to the student that was here earlier, would give you 6 students from the school who are dressed in their school uniforms, together with some other adults that I would want to believe would be the head teacher as well as parents of the other school. Now, among these 6 persons are the one seen in the video perpetrating the act, the one who is the victim, as well as the one that took the video actually, and then the rest, we are told, are actually witnesses to the incident. And so that's the number of students who are here. What is unclear is whether the house master who has been suspended is also part of the team. We do not know or cannot confirm that, and so we know that they are here. And what is currently ongoing, we are picking, is that there is currently a meeting happening between the authorities of the Ghana Education Service as well as the Deputy Minister of Education. That meeting is currently ongoing, but the students are still in the bus. What we know is that they would be ushered in to continue that meeting after the meeting between the GES authority as well as the Deputy Minister for Education is concluded. And so that is what is happening now. The substantive meeting has not started yet with the students as we speak, Kojo.
Do we have any idea which officials of the Ghana Education Service that these people will be meeting with?
Okay, so we are not very clear about that. All we hear from the morning, and some of us had indicated, is a blank statement that authorities from the national level of the Ghana Education Service who went to the school are actually the ones coming back to Accra. And so it is unclear whether the DG of the Ghana Education Service himself will be part of that meeting, or the Deputy DG will be chairing that. But what we know is that the Deputy Minister of Education is the one holding the meeting with the GES authority as we speak. And so it's unclear which specific or particular authorities from the GES would be steering that meeting.
James, I want to thank you for your time. Obviously, you'll keep an eye on that for us, and we'll learn more as it happens. Also, big thanks to Amanda Clinton, as well as Edmund Foley and Divine Kwe. Very informative and educational conversation. We appreciate your time very much. This is The Pulse, and there is more to come. We certainly have to look at the home bank saga, as it's being called. Millions, at least $1 million and a million cedis and much more stolen, allegedly, from the home of a former minister. And the fallout is huge. More after these. You're welcome back. The Pulse continues to give you all the vital signs across the news landscape of Ghana. Now, we are going to talk about the home bank scandal. But first, in the education sector, yet some more news. A statement now from the Teacher Trainees Association. I'm going to read it to you. It's the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana releasing this statement dated July 24. I'll read it quickly. It's not very long. It's signed by John Edem Abeji, who's the General Secretary, and Jeptha Nana Kwame, who's the President. It says, on behalf of the National Executive Council of the Association, we write to provide you with a crucial update regarding the disbursement of teacher trainee allowances. 1. We are pleased to inform you that the allowance payment has been confirmed and will be disbursed this week. As per the arrangement, the allowance for 3 months will be paid to eligible teacher trainees. 2. However, we have been informed that the allowance component of trainees has been reduced to 149 Ghana cedis based on the request from PRINCOF to the Ministry of Education last academic year to supplement the feeding of trainees effective this academic year. We would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to all of you for your patience, commitment, and support throughout the fight for the teacher trainees allowance. We remain resolute in our efforts to secure the best possible outcomes for your welfare. Thank you very much. And that's the statement that is dated July 24, coming from the Teacher Trainees Association. Now, we're joined by a few people to help us understand all of this. Professor Samuel Atintono is the national president of PRINCOF. Jeptha Nana Kwame is the president of the of the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana, and Bismarck Tay is deputy managing editor, Teacher Education Journal. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, if you can all unmute your microphones so we can hear you. All right, Professor Atintono, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with you because PRINCOF comes up for mention in this statement. Apparently, it is based on a request you made that there has now been a reduction in the allowance. Help us understand, why did you request a reduction?
Thank you very much, and let me say good afternoon to TAC President, who is our own student, and then to all the principals of the 46 colleges and your cherished listeners. The background to the reduction, I would first of all want to establish that the teacher training allowances remains 400 cedis since when they brought it back. So the totality of it is still 400 cedis. There's nothing that has been reduced. Now, what people call reduction, we ought to get it right. The 400 was put into two components. One part given to the principals to feed the students, which used to be 196 Ghana cedis. And then the student then get 204 cedis, which goes to their pocket. We'd all agree that by 2022, when we had a crisis, right from the COVID, and even general food prices increase. So PRINCOF itself will be managing per day, the feeding component is 60-50 pesos. So we made an appeal and a request to the Minister of Education looking for some adjustment. Indeed, the actual cost that we were looking for to mitigate the situation was almost 30 cedis. But when we appeal, I think we have had discussions, and at the consultation, we knew clearly government itself for the current situation that we found ourselves, it was not possible to get the upward adjustment. So we had to do consultation. So when we did, what we proposed or at the table was, the students, after all, the 400 is for them. So if we are having challenges to the feeding, they ought to agree that part of what they take should be seeded up to add up to the feeding component. It is on that basis that we'll have discussions, and then government managed to increase to 7 cedis 50 pesos, and then we needed 1 cedi 50 pesos to make it 10 cedis per day. So it is that 1 cedi 50 pesos that's coming from each of the students that led to a total deduction of about 51 Ghana cedi, which means that they now have 100 they had 159 cedis going to them. So something just a little over 50 or just around 50 cedis was taken to add up to the feeding component, which makes 10 cedis per day now.
Right.
Now, the feeding is still the same students. So even though PRINCOF has taken it, it is not as if the principals are feeding themselves. It is feeding for the students. And it is because we have deep that we all arrive at that. And I must indicate that that conversation took place between our stakeholder, GTEC, was the Minister of Education, as well as our own students to see the way forward. So that's why we got to where whatever now comes to their packet, instead of the 200, got to around 155 or so. Thank you.
Right. Jepta, I mean, how have your members received this news with the adjustments thereof?
All right, thank you very much. And let me start by greeting your listeners and viewers across the country and my own daddy, Professor Atintuno, as well as members of the Teacher Training Association of Ghana. Yeah, so in fact, we receiving this information and the student form, I must be honest that it's not what the students are happy about, seeing the component that comes to them reduced, although in the same vein has gone to a component that is being used to feed them. But if I'm to speak in honesty, then I would say that the students are not happy about that though.
The explanation from Prof. Atintono is that ultimately, even what is being taken away is still being used to feed the same students. So what's your continued complaint?
Very much. Just like he's saying, I understand from that point that it's still used to feed us. And no doubt about that, that prices of goods and services in the market have gone higher. That may warrant their request. However, the students also receiving that little component that used to come to them were grateful because in as much as it was quite little, they were still managing. And to see their components being reduced will be added to another component. What I can say is that it's in a way to also render them handicapped with whatever they use we use our components for. Because if we used to be doing printing, if we used to be doing buying handouts, if we used to be assisting ourselves in so many ways, so far as teacher education is concerned in the College of Education, in this sense, it means that we are going to be challenged. Sure.
But so Jepta, I mean, as I'm sure you're aware, the country is going through economic crisis. We're in an IMF program. Everybody is being asked to tighten their belts. So, from the perspective of yourself and your members, what are you willing to do by way of tightening your belts? If you are not happy with the adjustment to your component, then what are you willing to do to tighten your belts?
In fact, what we will be doing is basically to have the understanding or have the comprehension in whatever that repartitioning has become. Like I mentioned, it's been added to a component that is being used to feed us. So we expect that once that has gone there, there should be improvements in the food that we are being served in the College of Education, because there were times that it happened that our principals were finding it very difficult to feed us.
Yeah, Jepta, you are telling me what you expect. I'm asking what you are willing to give up.
Please come again.
You are telling me what you expect, right? But I am asking you, what are you and your members willing to give up, since we are all being asked to tighten our belts and give up something for our ailing economy?
Oh, sure. In fact, with the 15% increments that came, Teacher Training Association, its members are also paying such monies. We used to be paying examination fee of 400 cedis. Right now, we are paying examination fee of 460 Ghana cedis. And the fees we used to be paying way back last year and the previous years, we are experiencing 15% increment that we can all bear, because the government, as you said, is facing a very critical challenge in terms of finance. So those are ways that we also support. And nonetheless, we understand the challenges of the government.
Right. I want to bring in our third guest, who is joining us via telephone. And, it seems we may have lost him. So let me come back to Prof. Now, what is the perspective of Prinkov on that long unanswered question? There's a lot of politics around this whole teacher trainee concept. And the general question that is often asked is that other professionals are not paid and fed to acquire their professional qualification. Doctors, engineers, they are not paid or fed in order to acquire these professions. Why must teachers be paid and fed to become teachers? Prof, I think you might have to unmute your microphone so we can hear you.
All right, sorry about it.
Yeah,
thank you very much. I think the question as to why teachers should be fed and other professionals are not fed should not be the issue to be discussed for now. There are different professions. Clearly, teaching is different from medicine, also from law. I think it's an intervention that's put in place for some reason to ensure that we have some kind of a support for teacher training. For me, if we want to have the conversation around it and say, well, we no longer want it, that would be a national conversation we'll have to have at some other point to look at the medicine.
What's wrong with now? What's wrong with having it now? Is it not timely, bearing in mind that the new allowances have been approved and they are going to be paid? Is this not the time to have this conversation?
I recall sometime last year, I mean, the Teacher Education Journal had it. We had a conversation. Princop was there, government was there, TAC itself was there. The students had a position on it. We made some recommendations to government, clearly to the minister, with respect to a number of issues, not only the feeding one, which I think there are issues that have been discussed, and again, to go for another conversation around it. So for me, I don't think it is something that we should be talking about. Should we cancel it? Should we not cancel? Where we have gotten to, and today's discussion is all around how can we manage the feeding cost to ensure that the principals who are bearing this in their colleges have some form of relief. I heard Jefta, that's our student, saying, yes, the students heard it, they are not happy. But you ask the question, what exactly do they want to do themselves? Then he veered off to talk about the fee increment, which is not the issue here. If you look at the intensity that we are talking of, I can assure you the principals, including myself, have taken that exceptional kind of consideration to see how we manage. Because we're in Ghana now. If you take 10 cities to go and feed somebody morning, afternoon, evening, clearly it's a big challenge for everybody. But they are our students. It is some intervention that government introduced. We have to see how we can manage it, and that's what we are doing. So for me, TAC cannot at this point be saying they are not happy about the component that comes. As I indicated earlier, it is for the benefit of their own students. And he has said here that he expects quality food, he expects the quality to be good. It's we look at that context and for the students to understand why this adjustment has been made and not to be agitating for it. The worst scenario would have been if we were to say, okay, well, take it and feed yourself. We know the implications that would have happened. It's not something that could be good on our campuses.
Okay. Now, I think we have been joined by Bismarck Tay now. He's the Deputy Managing Editor of Teacher Education. Bismarck, you've listened to your colleagues talk about this new development. The change in the component is not going down so well with the teacher trainees, but they say, well, they'll take it like that since it's going to be used to feed them. I want the big picture perspective from you, Bismarck. At this point, going forward, now that this money has been approved, what are the expectations of the teacher trainees going forward?
Thank you, Kudu. I believe, as rightly said by Prof, this really is not a decrease in the allowances of teacher trainees, because the allowance is still the 400 cedis. It's the increment in prices that has stated this. And I believe trainees shouldn't really have a problem with this, because we all know how situations are in the country. A deeper conversation, which maybe another day will take place, would be government continuous support of the feeding of trainees as against all the other needs of the colleges on campus, and having a more proactive and holistic approach to solving the critical needs of the colleges.
Bismarck,
So
I'm actually interested in us having that conversation today. You heard me asking Prof about it, so I'd love your perspective on it. No time like the present.
Okay, so for us at the Teacher Education Journal, we see a lot of, infrastructural deficits on campus, where there is a need for a lot of capital injection to even expand access to college education in the first place. Because of the limited infrastructure on campus now, you have, at every time, some people being at home because they don't have the infrastructure to accommodate everyone. That's on one side, and it would take money to invest in those critical infrastructure on the campus. Secondly, the payment of allowances also places a burden of restriction on government as to the number of people to admit to college each year. Now, I'm speaking as someone who has been a product of the teacher education system, knowing very well that the institution of the allowance was to attract people to come into teaching when the numbers of teachers were very low in the country, and also especially in posting teachers to certain critical aspects and places in the country. So, since the inception of the allowances till now, the initial objective of introducing the allowance, have we achieved the objective? And is there a required number of teachers? Is there a deficit in the number of teachers, especially at the rural areas across the country? That's one. Then also, in terms of the employment market, the dynamics now, do we have less people interested in going into teaching because the teaching profession isn't as attractive as it was in the past, or it's more attractive than it was in the past?
What are the answers? From your perspective, what are the answers to these questions?
For me, I believe the teaching profession is more attractive now because at the inception of the allowance, the salaries of even teachers was so low. Incentive for teachers was virtually non-existent, but now everybody who is doing an honest analysis will know that the teaching profession, the teacher is more in a better place now than before. And so coming from that perspective, as a journal, we believe that we do cost-benefit analysis and look at, okay, the feeding of trainees, the 400 cedis per person, that's the allowance, catering for feeding and other things. As against expanding access, where a lot more people can have access to college education, and then we can have teachers go into the classroom and teach. We believe that's more of where we should be looking at, and not necessarily should the allowance be increased vis-a-vis the economic situation we have now.
Okay, I really appreciate your perspective there. Bismarck Tay is the Deputy Managing Editor of Teacher Education Journal, and we appreciate your time as well as our other speakers on that matter. All right, let's get into the home bank. This afternoon, investigations are continuing into the Cecilia Kwabena Agyepong scandal as both the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the Attorney General take keen interest in the matter. The OSP raided the homes in cantonments and some close associates of the former Water and Sanitation Minister Cecilia Kwabena Agyepong before interrogators of the Office of the Special Prosecutor to respond to the controversial stolen money issue. Madam Agyepong herself is currently on bail with surety after spending hours in the custody of the OSP, who had earlier conducted searches at both her official residence in cantonments and her private residence in Abilinkpe. The searches were related to the alleged $1 million cash theft by housekeepers, which led to her resignation on Saturday. The update now is that Frida Prempeh has been appointed as the new Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources. We're going to keep you up to date on that incident. But just to update you on what was missing from Cecilia Dapa's Abiligbe home. Let's have a look at details right now. So, well, there was $1 million cash allegedly stolen. Also, 300,000 euros cash. Also, 350,000 Ghana cedis cash. Now, in terms of valuables, 6 pieces of assorted kente valued at 90,000 Ghana cedis were stolen. 6 sets of men's suits valued altogether at $3,000 also allegedly stolen. Assorted clothing to the value of 95,000 Ghana cedis, also allegedly stolen, and assorted handbags to the value of $35,000, also allegedly stolen. Finally, assorted perfumes valued at $1,400, and assorted jewelry valued at $95,000. These are all allegedly missing, purportedly stolen by the suspects in the theft case. All right, now it's time for us to take a very quick break. Go grab yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, because when we come back, it's time for Jollof. Welcome back. Now let's hold the jollof for a moment and let's get into the election headquarters. We begin our build-up to the NPP's August 26 Super Delegates Conference, and the former General Secretary of the NPP, Kwabena Agyepong, says the party stands a better chance of winning the 2024 polls if it presents a fresh face. He himself will be on the ballot with 9 others, but he believes he stands tall and has worked hard to earn the enviable slot of flag bearer of the governing party. Joseph Akable of our politics desk reports.
Kwabena Agyepong is not new to the NPP flag bearer race. He was part of 17 aspirants who sought to lead the party into the 2008 polls.
We, the NPP, are the tradition that believes in creating a world of plenty. We must all be determined to make this country that shining example that all Africans were proud to say is on this our continent.
He only managed 9 votes, representing 0.4% of the votes cast. His membership of the party goes as far back as its early days, when he played an active role in the campaign of presidential candidates Albert Edubuahi and John Agyekum Kufuor in 1992 and 1996.
I humbly submit, I, Kwabena Agyepong, offer the hope of a fresh start for Ghana. It is a matter of public record that I've always availed myself to this tradition. More importantly, for example, in the run-up to the 1992 election, under the Rawlings dictatorship, when it was life-risking to be associated with the NPP. I'm not a newcomer. I did not join our great tradition midstream after the danger abated. I have served this party right from the get-go and in many capacities. I was there when it mattered most and also when the party was at the peak of its glory. I gathered valuable experience doing so, sitting at the feet of some of the revered leaders of our tradition, the likes of the Venerable B.J. Darocha, Stephen Kreku, Peter Alajete, Albert Edubuahi, T.D. Brodiments, R.R. Amponsa, Kwame Donkofojo, Alhaji Bin Sali, Roland Al-Hassan, Johnny Selby.
When the party won power in 2000, he became President John Agyekum Kufuor's press secretary. This journey has not always been smooth. Despite successfully winning the party's general secretary position in 2014, he was later suspended. This suspension has since been set aside and is back seeking to lead again. He believes the NPP needs a new face.
Our party, the NPP, cannot afford to put forward those who led us to this state. I want to repeat myself. Our party, the NPP, therefore, cannot afford to put forward those who led us to this state and expect Ghanaians to embrace them during the 2024 election. We need a new face, a pair of clean hands, a leader to reconnect with our base and earn the trust of Ghanaians.
Mr. Agyepong is promising a lean and all-inclusive government if given the nod.
To send a strong signal. It's not about the quantum of money you save by downsizing the government, but the moral message you send to the Ghanaian people that you are serious about what you're doing. Cut down the government perks. In Ghana right now, it appears people enjoy government perks more than the work that they are supposed to do.
The 61-year-old engineer and former sports broadcaster will be back on the ballot on August 26 when the Super Delegates Conference takes place.
May God help us all, and may God bless our homeland, Ghana. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right. Now, there's something new that I'd love to show you. Okay, if you've been to myjoyonline.com recently, you would have discovered that there's the fresh new look about it. They put things in a very different format, making it look all familiar, even though it's never looked like that before. Well, I'm very excited. My colleague Isaac is here to help us understand what has happened and why the change and how we can find our way around the brand new myjoyonline.com. It really looks good, doesn't it?
It does. And just to empower readers also with the ease of using the website. Yeah. And of course, I mean, we are coming late with this communication. We told them we were going to give them something new. But how to find your way around is why we are here this afternoon.
And you're going to walk us through it. But, I mean, first of all, why does it look so familiar? Why does it look like something we've seen before?
I'm sure you have always been on social media.
Yes.
You're talking about the flow, and exactly that is what we have imitated. Majority of our readers are coming from mobile platforms, and that is how your fingers are scrolling through your stories and what have you. Basically, what we have done is to empower readers to tell themselves, this is the story I want to read. Right. A lot of the time, you look at the previous interface, and you have journalists who have selected what stories we think were the major stories you should read. Of course, sometimes you go behind and look at the numbers, and people are telling you what stories they think sync better with them. That is what we have done with this new website. So you go there, apart from perhaps the top story, that is just about one story that we may have featured at the top there. The rest of it is up to you. What is it that you want to read? So you scroll through the pages, the stories, and you settle with what you want to read. Now, when you are on a desktop, of course, your categories are readily on the left, to your left of the website. All the categories are there. So you hit any of them, and then you can go into the stories. Previously, what you have will be a drop-down of the subcategories. It is no longer so. Once you go into your category, you look at what is the story that you want to read there. If it's business, for instance, perhaps you are interested in finance or the economy. Once you read, we offer you more economy stories. If you are not interested in that, you scroll back to the bottom of the same story that you are reading. Or even if you read to the end of the story, we have other offers for you over there. But otherwise, if you are also coming by the mobile, then there's a button at the right bottom. That is your menu button. Usually it is red. And sometimes, depending on what tablet, what mobile phone you are using, you may see sometimes it's a black color, but it's usually red at the base of your right bottom. Tap it, and then it gives you the categories. They are all available. Now, readily when you pick your phone or you go onto the website, you have all the products that come to you from the multimedia group, all displayed readily at the top there, whether you are a TV fan, you want radio, podcasts, they are all ready at the top. So just a tap and you are into what it is that you are looking for. What we have also done is also to offer you a lot more of our videos. So virtually after every 2 stories that you read, you see there's a video to share. If you're not interested, of course, the stories are also there for you to move on. So, yes, we should have come to our readers earlier with all of this. But for those of our readers who are also not finding the button, particularly for those who are using the app, the Joy News app, it means that you need to reinstall. Right. Yes, so you get a push notification to reinstall the app, and then it gives you the button. Some of those who have not done that do not see the menu button
on the bottom.
So then looking for stories become difficult. Otherwise, this is to make life simpler for everybody.
I've got to tell you, it looks very exciting, and that social media engaging look is certainly attractive. Tell us, is it now easier for the reader to interact, to comment, to
to share?
Yes.
Do all the things that you want to do? Yes. So immediately after the story, at the base of it, all the buttons are readily available. Is it you want to tweet them? You can do that. You want to copy and share? You can do this. You want to email it? It's all available just at the base of the story that you think is very interesting. You want to share with your colleagues. It's easier. That is how simple it is. Yeah.
Well, listen, you guys need to go and check it out. Isaac and the team have done a fantastic job with the brand new My Joy Online interface. Go and check it out for yourself. Re-download that app so you can see the button at the bottom right and see all the great stories that are unfolding. Tell you what, speaking of great stories unfolding, what I'm about to share with you, will very soon be on myjoyonline.com. It's a statement issued by the police, and it's a very short one, dated today, 25th of July. It says, police submit case docket on investigation into a case of stealing reported by Mr. Daniel Osei-Kuffour and Cecilia Dapaah to the Office of the Attorney General. And it's a 2-paragraph statement signed by Grace Ansa Akrufi, who is the Assistant Commissioner of Police and Director of Public Affairs. It says, 1, following a case of stealing reported to the police by Mr. Daniel Osei-Kuffour and Cecilia Dapaah, former Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, the police initiated investigations into the case, arrested some suspects, recovered some of the stolen items, and arraigned the suspects before court. 2, police have since forwarded the docket to the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice for review and advice. This is just coming in from the police service regarding the Cecilia Dapaah case. And of course, what this means is that the Attorney General will soon be advising the CID, Criminal Investigation Department of the Ghana Police Service, on how to proceed with this investigation. We are already picking up information from our sources that the Attorney General will advise the CID to investigate the source of the stolen cash. That would be an interesting development there. Okay, and we will certainly bring you details as that story unfolds. Now, I was dying to share some Jollof and Jollof-related news with you. We're going to have to do that on our next encounter. But listen, until that next encounter, we're not leaving you empty-handed. Go check out the brand new myjoyonline.com for all of the best and biggest stories from across the world. Until we're together again, have a fantastic time. My name is Kwabena Agyepong. It's been a pleasure to keep your pulse racing. We're back with more